Things are gonna get crazy!
Most everyone's mad here.
Hello and welcome back to AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. How are you all doing, everybody? And hopefully you are all enjoying your big Labor Day weekend. And already some people are letting out their excitement immediately. Thank you, Jay Monty, for that subscription right there. Yes, technically it is the long weekend, and as I am recording this, it is Labor Day. But even though this is the day where everybody would go and take a break from work, and that we do highlight the importance of labor and the working class, especially in this day and age where strikes are really ramped up, more so than usual, especially with what's been happening in Hollywood with both the actor strike and the writer strike. It shows the importance of people who are working and why their well-being is as important as the projects that they would go and work, regardless of where they would be. Oh my god, there's more. Wow, I'm just getting a whole bunch of subscriptions I see, like from Gorn ZX and Tunjatsu. Well, that one's a gifted one. Thank you all so much for the thank you for the subscriptions. But as I was saying, of course, it is important to go and highlight that the well-being of workers is as important as the projects that they work on, which is why it is critical to support unions and that we look out for the well-being and for the health of employees. So just want to go and quickly mention that. But also, I have noticed that during the weekend, it was a little bit sad, especially in terms of music, where we have seen the passing of two great legends. First of all, a few days ago, there was Jimmy Buffett, who passed away. And as I'm recording this today, sadly, we also had Steve Harwell, I believe his name. Yes, Steve Harwell, who was the lead singer of Smash Mouth. Very unexpected news to hear, but also very tragic to hear that this even happened in the first place. And as Steve said in his immortal song All Star, that only shooting stars break the mold. And I think it is safe to say that those two certainly have broken the mold in the industry and have become phenomenons in their own right. So may both Buffett and Harwell rest in peace. All right, so with all that said, I would just also like to go and quickly mention that this is another case where it will be a shorter episode than usual. There hasn't been a whole lot of animation news or entertainment news in general, but I have selected some stories in which we will definitely have fun, and we will be highlighting many of the craziness that we have recently seen happen. So, with that said, I would now like to go into the chat wall, and I would like to ask you all, are you ready for today's episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast? Let me hear it, folks. Are you all ready now? Let's see. Okay, yep, alrighty. I do see that people are starting to go and prepare for this episode. That is great to hear. That is great to see. And with all that said, it is now time that we shall go and get things started. And with our first story that we have for you today, we are going to go and discuss about what is easily the biggest movie of the summer, Barbie. Now, I've already talked about this feature a few times before in this podcast, but this time around, what Barbie recently did, it was actually very monumental. Now, we know that in terms of the box office, Barbie has already broken a few records. Not only is it right now the biggest movie of the summer, but it is also the highest grossing film ever directed solely by a woman. Or, yeah, I think I've worded that correctly. But regardless of that, those are definitely well-deserved, monumental achievements that it has done. But now Barbie has actually done so much more at the box office. Yes, not only is Barbie the biggest box office hit of the summer of 2023, and like I said before, the highest grossing film ever to be directed by solely a woman, but also Barbie has now broken the record where it is currently the highest grossing film of 2023. Yes, Barbie has now gotten the title of the 2023 Queen, where as I am recording this, according to my source at Box Office Mojo, it is stated that Barbie currently has a domestic box office total of $609.5 million. Internationally, it has done $771.5 million, accumulating to a worldwide total of $1.38 billion. And this has already broken the record that was previously held by the Super Mario Brothers movie, in which that film has a domestic total of $575 million, an international total of $784.8 million, and a worldwide total of just $1.36 billion. I mean, what the Super Mario Brothers did in itself is definitely admirable and a great achievement in itself, but now Barbie has managed to go and up the game from Mario. Now, technically, Mario still has the international numbers beat compared to Barbie, but I'm sure even that is going to be surpassed. But the biggest record that Barbie has broken, more so than any of the ones that I have mentioned, is actually becoming the highest grossing movie ever for Warner Brothers, breaking that big record from Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 back in 2011, where that film, even though the grand majority of it came from the international box office with $961 million there, so nearly $1 billion internationally, its worldwide total is actually just $1.34 billion. So even managing to up that game, where now Barbie has that major title, like not only owning 2023 so far, but also owning like the top spot for all of Warner Brothers movies. And let me tell you, what a way to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the studio with their latest film and their latest phenomenon, just breaking all the records that way. So definitely an admirable feat right there. Now, I know that in the past, I have already talked about Barbie doing a tremendous, doing tremendous numbers at the box office, especially when it comes to the whole Barbenheimer meme where Barbie would be paired with Oppenheimer. And I know, I did already discuss about that, how the whole Barbenheimer trend really did help both Barbie and Oppenheimer to become two of the biggest box office successes of this year. But if we go and do recap a little bit about that, it really does go to show that sometimes memes can also be a great strategic way in order to go and promote your movies, or indirect promotion, because usually with these kinds of trends, it's better to be more organic and let the public to go and create those memes than to have the corporations to go and really manufacture them. Because sometimes it does happen when there's like a viral meme that is related to a movie where people are just going crazy about it, but then the moment the corporations try to go and touch it, suddenly it just becomes flat out dead, which is what we have seen last year with the whole Morbius meme, with the whole "it's Morbin time" meme, where right at the moment where Sony Pictures and Jared Leto tried to go and capitalize on it, suddenly people decided not to go and have fun with the whole meme anymore. It's like the meme just died right then and there. So much so that Sony Pictures tried to go and release Morbius again in theaters, only to make it flop even harder, making it possibly the first ever movie in history to flop at the box office twice in that same year even. But in the case of Barbenheimer, with both Barbie and Oppenheimer, with that whole trend, it really gave them a massive great start. Like, it really did turn into the biggest cinematic event in years, where it pretty much turned into this special occasion where people wanted to go and actually check out both films at the same time, where despite the fact that they were two completely opposite movies in tone, that they need to be watched together, that they were paired up so well. And it was a moment of opposites attract because of the fact that they were both released at the same time. And not to mention how they were both highly anticipated for a few years before their initial release. That really did help to go and make Barbie and Oppenheimer the biggest movies of the summer, and to really make it such a special occasion, because not only like did it turn out to be a massive phenomenon, but it turned out to be a massive event where people unironically got dressed up for. Because throughout the summer, you may recall, if you go to the movie theater, especially at the end of July and throughout August, then there was a very good chance that you have seen people literally dress up in pink to go and watch the Barbie movie. And that was the big thing about the meme, is that it turned the release of both those films and turned it into a massive cinematic event. And I would even say the biggest cinematic event that we have seen in years. That is, if you do combine both the success of Barbie and Oppenheimer, where it even exceeded the numbers that was done by what was it? Avatar: The Way of Water. So there really was that major thing. But you got to keep in mind, though, eventually both Barbie and Oppenheimer had to go and split, where Barbie would then go on to become a massive hit, even bigger than Oppenheimer. Like, I mean, Oppenheimer was still like a massive success in itself, of course, but Barbie just really went up and above, more so than any other movie that we have seen in many years. Like, probably one of the biggest successes, or definitely one of the biggest successes that we have seen post-pandemic. So how is it that Barbie really went up and above? What is it that Barbie got above Oppenheimer and most of the other movies from this year? Well, there are two particular reasons to go and really highlight. Now, of course, technically there would be three, because the whole Barbenheimer trend played a significant factor. But then there are the other two things that made Barbie specifically the cultural phenomenon that it ended up becoming. And number one, it would have to be the fact that it is debatably better than it has any right to be. Now, I know there are some people out there who would try to go and dismiss the success just by saying that, well, technically Barbie is a Barbie is a popular IP, and because of that, it became a massive hit. It's based on a popular toy that's been going on for a long time, and that's why it was so popular and it became a hit. Nah. That argument, I could say, is already dead, because technically there have been many movies that were released in the summer, and they were based on very popular brands, very popular IPs, debatably even more so than Barbie, but they ended up becoming massive box office flops. Case in point, take a look at take a look at Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Take a look at The Flash, which is part of the DC universe. Take a look at The Haunted Mansion. Take a look at even recently with Gran Turismo or Blue Beetle. Like, those movies did not do well at the box office, despite the fact that they were based on beloved franchises. But with Barbie, on the other hand, there were so many ways that they would go and take this property and they would turn it into a massive disaster. It's actually very easy to go and imagine how Hollywood could take something like Barbie and just make some kind of manufactured garbage that's just meaningless. And it could ultimately turn out as a flop, as most of the other movies that have been released this year. But this did not happen. And that is because Barbie managed to go and deliver so much more than anyone could ever imagine. Like, if you would initially think about what a Barbie movie is, you would never think that it would become something like with what we have gotten. It wouldn't be something that Greta Gerwig would go and create for the big screen. You wouldn't really expect that. In fact, I would actually go and describe Barbie as taking the Lego movie and then accelerate it to go and push what it has done to the next level. In a way where the Lego movie walked, Barbie ran, really going all out in terms of its silliness and delivering so much more than what people would expect in terms of substance. Like, this is an unapologetically goofy movie. Like, it almost has that similar sense that can be found with the Muppets, where it's very self-aware of what it's trying to do, and from there, it just unapologetically goes all out in terms of the silliness. It knows that the idea of a Barbie movie is absolutely ridiculous, so they kind of embrace that goofy tone and really doubles down on like what would be that stereotypical image of a Barbie, or like really going crazy in terms of its concepts, in terms of like the Barbie world and how people would play with Barbies just be brought to life on the big screen, or bringing Barbie into the real world and see how she would go and react, and how it really contrasts to Barbie Land and all that kind of stuff. So the goofiness was definitely there in order to give audiences a great time. Like, the comedy is absolutely on point, and even the acting is just fantastic, especially coming from Margot Robbie, Ryan Gosling, of course, and even some of the other actors. I would even credit doing a fantastic job. Kate McKinnon was a surprising standout performance, as well as Simu Liu, Michael Cera. I would even say even America Ferrera is a highlight, and also, well, Will Ferrell as well, doing some of his usual stuff, but like, it works tremendously well in this feature. So the fact that they're just going all out with the goofiness and the silliness in order to really ramp up the comedy and the lighthearted tone to make sure that everybody can have a great time, but also there's a lot of thought-provoking substance as well. It's not just the fact that this is like a dumb, goofy movie in the veins of what we have gotten recently, like Cocaine Bear or Strays. This is also something that it makes people think. It's the kind of movie that it also has something to say, which, trust me, I will get to much later on this. But the fact that it's a movie that discusses about womanhood and what it is like to be a woman in our society, and not to mention discussing other elements including feminism, toxic masculinity, and gender in general. It's something that like is very unexpected, and it's not just the fact that they would go and talk about these subject matter, but it's the fact that it handles it so well. It handles it on a very intellectual level, and there are moments where the movie would have to stop and just like have a moment to make you think about about like how women are in our society. That's why one of the greatest moments in the Barbie movie is the big monologue given by America Ferrera. Like, that was a true standout moment, and it's like, it was a big dialogue as well, but it really was a moment that really does make you think, where under this male dominant world, women are kind of screwed in terms of like having that kind of perception that they could ultimately never meet. So in that regard, the factor that the movie would go and deliver you so much that very few movies would be brave enough to go and actually tackle upon, going into these subject matters in an intellectual way while simultaneously giving you a fun, goofy time. Like, in a way, you could say these are very opposite tones, but the way that they managed to mix it together makes this one of the true standout films of the year. And many people are already saying that it is among the top 10 movies of 2023, or even debatably of this entire decade. So that is one major factor in relation to Barbie. It is actually the fact that it's just way better than anyone could ever imagine, and supply to audiences so much more than they could ever think. But then there's also The second factor, and this is honestly going to be a little bit controversial, and I did talk about it a little bit, but it is actually in relation to the fact that it is in what some people could say is political. It really is the factor that it discusses about these issues such as feminism, womanhood, and a woman's place in their society, in contrast to how it is in a very male-dominant world, the way that it heavily criticizes the patriarchy. Now, there are some aspects where, yes, it does satirize and criticize some elements about feminism, but it really is the factor that Barbie is a very pro-woman and a very pro-feminist film. And it's, again, it's not just the factors that it has elements of feminism and womanhood and all that kind of stuff. It's the way that it handles it so well. And the fact that you would get the detractors who would try to go and attack it, but they ended up failing miserably. Like during the time when Barbie was released, one thing that a lot of people are were just going crazy over is the utter humiliation of these culture war influencers and far-right personalities trying to go and attack Barbie by calling it the most woke film that they have ever seen, and just got destroyed with every argument. Like the thing is, like, all these like culture war strategies with what they would go and try to do, like the same kind of culture war attacks that they do against like Disney and any other thing that they would go and call it woke, it completely set them back because of Barbie. Like whatever attacks they would try to do, it would go and further prove Barbie's point in regards to toxic masculinity and in terms of the patriarchy. And utterly humiliated personalities such as Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, the Critical Drinker, the Quartering, and any other of those far-right incel related channels. Like whatever attacks that they would try to do against woke culture, they would get completely destroyed. And it pretty much opened up to the reality that any of these culture, any of these like culture war influencers or any of those conservatives that go against anything that is woke, or that they consider themselves a fighter against the woke mind virus, that they're just bigots, that they make it openly clear that the only reason why they hate Barbie and label it as anti-men is because they're sexist, and that they have a very misogynistic perspective against Barbie. And that's why nowadays we are seeing many of these people heavily backtrack, and this was something that I did predict and it turned out to actually be correct, where conservatives were desperately trying to go and portray Barbie as something that is politically neutral, that somehow there is nothing woke about Barbie, that somehow it's making fun of feminism as much as it is making fun of men, that it doesn't take both sides, when in reality they know that it is a lie. They know that Barbie is exactly how they would go and portray some of the Disney live action remakes, and whenever they would try to go and attack Barbie and try to label it as woke, it further makes them look bad, which is why they're trying to go and abandon and in a way try to rewrite history to say that somehow, well, Barbie is not woke. And not to mention, regarding the fact that like with Barbie, it further proves that many of their ideologies is nothing more but a lie, that the woke mind virus is actually nothing more but inclusivity and progressivism, and that anybody who goes and attacks the woke mind virus is nothing more but a bigot. And it also further proves that go woke, go broke is a massive lie, because technically Barbie, as they say, is the most woke movie out there, yet it is now also the most successful movie in this year. Not to mention many of the other movies that would be considered woke that have also become big hits as well, such as Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. The Little Mermaid remake is also considered pretty profitable for Disney. Then you also got Elemental, with its prominent themes of immigration, could also be perceived as woke, and it turned out to be a hit. And not to mention even the Super Mario Brothers movie, where they tried hard to label it as woke because of Princess Peach now being portrayed as more feminist, and then suddenly when the movie turned out to be a hit, they backtrack and tried to call it a conservative movie. In fact, why else do you think you're seeing so many conservatives going on an all-out attack on the Snow White remake? It is nothing more but damage control. They know that their reputation got massively scarred by Barbie, that Barbie openly exposed them as the biggest that they all are, and so they want to try to go and backtrack and go focus on something that they know everybody hates, which in this case is a Disney live action remake. And they resume their whole tactics of trying to spread misinformation of go woke, go broke, or that, oh, female-led movies are always a flop, and continuously attack Rachel Zegler. Now, there is an argument that can be had about the Snow White remake, about how it is unnecessary, and that, yeah, maybe Rachel Zegler's take is cringe, but all conservatives who go against woke culture, all conservatives who are critical about anything that is woke, they're all bigots. And that when you see people like Geeks Plus Gamers, the Critical Drinker, the Quartering, when they go and attack it, they're just doing it for harassment purposes. They're doing it because they're all racist and they're all misogynist who want to spread harassment against Rachel Zegler. The same way that they want to go and make harassment and send death threats to other women of color, such as Halle Bailey and Kelly Marie Tran. And I know this for a fact because real Disney fans are not bigots who hate woke culture. Real Disney fans are actually okay with woke culture. They're just doing this as a way to go and make people forget that they are bigots because of the Barbie movie and how that completely failed, and that they're just doing it in order to avoid to go and take the L. So that's just one major thing to go and say. And I can guarantee you, if it weren't for Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, and all those other mass shooting influencers that they would go and try to that they would go and try to attack Barbie by saying it's woke, Barbie would not be as successful as it is today. So that's why it is an important thing. Yes, Barbie is political. Barbie is woke. Barbie is a pro-feminist movie. And that is a major reason as to why this film is massively successful. It is why Barbie is the highest grossing film made by Warner Brothers. And so with that said, we're going to go and take a quick break because I realize I actually spend more time on this than I thought. So when we do come back, that's when I want to go and ask your opinion right now. How do you feel regarding the fact that Barbie has broken all these records to become the highest grossing film of 2023 and Warner Brothers' highest grossing film ever? So we will be right back. All right, welcome back. So with that said, once again, I would like to know from the chat wall, what do you all think about the success that Barbie has recently had, and what do you think about its box office record? So let's see what some people are saying here. From my perspective, I'm actually really surprised and yet glad that Barbie is doing very well in the box office. I do prefer Oppenheimer as a whole lot more since they came out during the whole Barbenheimer trend, but the Barbie movie is one that I think is worth the watch and deserves the great box office success. I'm quite curious on what Mattel will have to offer with their next set of movies. I know for sure not all of them are going to be good, but their door is always open for something new. Yeah, and one thing I will admit that, in my opinion, I do prefer Oppenheimer than Barbie, but not by a whole lot, honestly. I think they're both tremendous films, but I think from a cinematic perspective, Oppenheimer might have a bit more of a slight upper hand, where it's a lot, it's a lot more auteuristic, where Barbie does have that sense where it feels very Hollywood-like. But then again, Barbie is still fantastic. Like, if I would get, like, some people have asked me about, like, what ratings I would go and give them. I think honestly, like, Oppenheimer would be like a 9 out of 10 movie, where Barbie would be an 8.5. I think I wouldn't say an 8 out of 10 because, like, it is better, but not necessarily a 9. So that's just like where I would go with it. Let's see. As a cisgendered man, not only was Barbie one of the best movies I've seen this year, especially since it made Ben Shapiro cry like the little whiny bitch he is, but it made me feel more appreciated of the women in my life, including my mother, whom I do not have the best relationship with. This movie moved me and made me laugh and cry on multiple areas. I'm glad to see it succeed as much as it is. Yeah, that is definitely true. It's also hilarious, like the more Ben Shapiro tried to go and make Barbie look bad, the worse that it looks for him, because he keeps on trying to say that, oh, Barbie is woke, so that means it's gonna fail, it's gonna fail. And he keeps on trying again and again, but Ben Shapiro is a key factor in showing how go woke, go broke is just a massive lie. It's kind of hilarious to see that there are still many prominent conservatives who still follow and listen to Ben Shapiro when he's been a much bigger help for liberals much more than it is for conservatives. So yeah, thank you, Ben, for helping us out on proving how being woke is objectively better and objectively a smarter move than to go against it. Let's see, what else do we have here? I've been wondering why the go woke, go broke crowd has been in histrionics recently. Glad Marvel was able to provide some relief from the dumpster fire that is Warner Brothers. It didn't fix everything, and things are almost definitely going to get worse for the studio, but they helped a little bit. I'm hoping this means the Marvels will also have a similar success to further piss off the go woke, go broke crowd, unless they're too busy throwing tantrums over Starfield. I mean, you never know, honestly. You never know the things that they will get triggered by and how they'll get so pissed off. Especially with Starfield, when there was one idiotic British influencer who got all pissed off because of pronouns. And that is another thing that shows that the anti-woke crowd are just objectively dumb because of the way that they get so sensitive and they throw a massive hissy fit of the fact that there is pronouns going on. I mean, like, this isn't about politics. Pronouns are an essential tool in terms of language, and especially, maybe not necessarily for all languages, but it certainly is for the English language. So if pronouns are something that it triggers you and it gets you emotionally riled up, then maybe you should consider seeing a therapist, because that is not normal behavior. That's not mentally healthy. I'm just saying. Let's see now. Warner Brothers got lucky this time. Many of their films, especially the DC films, have been mostly bombs recently. The Flash being the biggest flop ever, and yet Barbie is their biggest film ever. I'm happy for the cast and crew of Barbie, especially Greta Gerwig. They made a fun, funny, and amazing film done by amazing filmmakers and actors. They all deserve it, and also making anti-woke idiots, aka Ben Shapiro, cry will always make me smile. Also, I met Ben's cousin earlier this year. Oh, that is interesting, because I know that just like many anti-woke people out there, like when you talk to their families, when you talk to their relatives, they are absolutely hated. So I can imagine that if you meet a family member of Ben Shapiro, they have nothing but resentment, because you know for a fact that these anti-woke people are just absolutely lonely and they only rely on each other's bigotry in order to find company. They know they are failures to their family, they know they're failures to their community, and they know they are failures to their country. Their opinions do not matter, and their lives don't matter, because they don't even have one in the first place. And trust me, they know this quite well. Let's see what else we have here. I am happy to see Barbie is now the highest grossing film of 2023, and this is huge news for a female director. The movie is fun, the creative story, and has a great message on feminism. Oh, David Zaslav thought that The Flash was going to succeed for Warner Brothers, but nope, that flopped hard. Especially the multiverse scene done by AI and doesn't make sense. Barbie won, The Flash lost. Women won, men lost. Sorry, Ezra Miller, have fun with your box office bomb. It's kind of ironic because there is even one scene in which, or there was one piece of dialogue in which they actually made fun of Zack Snyder's Justice League, and that it's only, for the most part, it really is just toxic men who really do fanboy over like that failed attempt of a cinematic universe. All right, I think I'm going to read just one more comment before we go and jump onto our next break and our next story. All of this is so well deserved. Personally, I don't think Barbie is perfect, but it is still a very good movie that was able to connect with so many people around the world. Much like Spider-Man No Way Home, Top Gun Maverick, Avatar The Way of Water, and even the Super Mario Bros. Movie, Barbie was able to capture the cultural zeitgeist and appeal to pretty much every single person on the planet. It's not every day you get a movie like this, but when you do, it can be a massive phenomenon. Exactly. So with that said, we're going to go on to our next break. And we did discuss about a little bit of how Warner Brothers, like, you know, they got a little bit of relief with Barbie, but still a bit in trouble with many of their failures like Blue Beetle and The Flash especially. But there is another company that, oh boy, they're in so much trouble, more so than you may think. So we'll be right back after this. All right, now when it comes to our next story, we are going to be talking about Disney. And while there have been some positive highlights in terms of Disney, including the opening of Tron Light Cycle Run at Walt Disney World, which I have been, and oh my god, was it amazing. And also some pretty decent movies that they did put out that turned out to be financial hits, including The Little Mermaid remake and Elemental. But when it comes to their business side, oh boy, what a nightmare that was. Oh boy, it's been pretty bad. Remember back late last year when people thought that things were going to get better for Disney because Bob Iger came back to be the CEO and replaced Bob Chapek? Oh boy, were we wrong on that. And there have been so many things so far in which the business side of Disney has just been one piece of nightmare after another. We've been seeing the stocks have just been going down and down and down. The way that they're trying to save $5.5 billion have not been looking so great, especially when they were removing content from Disney Plus and firing like thousands of employees. And most importantly, in regards to the strike and how Disney has been handling this with all the other studios, has just been making things worse for the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, especially with some of Bob Iger's comments. It's just like, shut up, Bob, you're not helping. So yeah, business-wise, it's just been going pretty bad. So what the fridge how the fridge is it that it can get worse? How is it that things will suddenly really drop off and it gets worse for Disney? Oh, well, I can tell you how. Maybe another lawsuit in the way. Yes, that's what we are going to be talking about here. The fact that Disney has found themselves in a lawsuit with their investors. Specifically, and I will keep using this word, allegedly, for manipulating their investors into believing that Disney Plus is actually going well, that they're having strong numbers, and that the streaming platform is actually doing great. When in actuality, no, not really. It's been pretty rough on Disney Plus. In fact, to go and read you here from my source on Deadline, it states right over here that plaintiff brings this action derivatively for the benefit of the nominal defendant Disney against certain of the company's current executive officers and directors, aiming to rectify the defendant's violations of the Exchange Act and breaches of fiduciary duties for issuing false and misleading statements and or omitting material information in the company's public filings and proxy statements for approximately December 10th, 2020 to the present. Said Stoutbridge Investment in the August 21st filing over what it calls materially misleading statements and or omissions the company and top executives made over the true financial state of affairs on Disney Plus. And to go even further into what they are suing for, this part actually says over here, to conceal these adverse facts, defendants engage in a fraudulent scheme designed to hide the extent of Disney Plus losses and make the growth trajectory of Disney Plus subscribers appear sustainable, and 2024 Disney Plus targets appear achievable when they are not, the New Jersey-based Mouse House shareholder claims, as others have in previous lawsuits. Specifically, defendants use the newly created DMED to inappropriately shift costs out of the Disney Plus platform and onto legacy platforms, Stoutbridge says in the jury seeking complaints via its Wilmington and Hewitt lawyers. So, by the way, there is one more thing to go and mention, is that the defendants in this case, it's not just the Walt Disney Company, but they're also suing the current CEO, Bob Iger, the former CEO, Bob Chapek, former Chief Financial Officer, Christine McCarthy, ex-Disney Media Entertainment Distribution Chairman and Chapek's right-hand man, Kareem Daniels, and more top-level execs. So that's currently what is going on. Is for the fact that, or not necessarily the fact, but it's for allegedly lying about the Disney Plus numbers, where it's just not, business-wise, it's just not been going well on the platform. And you know, I will say that there is actually something pretty funny about this lawsuit showing up. I remember last week when I was talking about the strike, specifically like the actors and writers strike, I remember there was one commenter who came up and actually mentioned that there were rumors going around that the reason why studios are still not accepting the offers of actors and writers is because if they do accept their offer, then that would mean they would have to go and reveal their numbers to them. They would have to be more transparent about the current status of how things are going on their respective platforms, whether it be Netflix, Amazon, Max, Apple, Disney Plus, or whatever. And if they do reveal those numbers, then they would end up revealing that they have been lying all along to their investors, and then stuff like this would go and happen. And personally, I feel like with what Disney is going through, there is some credibility to it. I do believe that, yeah, like it would, you know, I do believe that it's not just Disney that would be lying about their numbers to their investors. I'm sure that Netflix or Amazon are doing the same thing. It's just that they're better at trying to hide it from their investors more so than Disney, because Disney has been in a pretty rough shape to the point where they really can't hide anything about their status, where things have just not been going well. And I will go and say this immediately. What is honestly the most messed up part about this entire lawsuit is that, believe it or not, this is not the only one that they are facing. And I don't mean the lawsuit, like this specific lawsuit. I don't mean like lawsuits in general. I mean actually being sued for that exact same reasons. There is actually more than one lawsuit out there in which investors are mad at Disney for allegedly lying about the financial state of Disney Plus. The only significant difference is that with that one and the one that we got right now is that this new lawsuit actually features Bob Iger, because in the past, people would just go and blame Bob Chapek and his leadership and the people who worked for him, that they are the ones that are responsible. But now things are starting to change, and now Bob Iger is being included as well. And personally, I feel like this is something that is just about time that the investors would go and do, and that if we are doing this kind of scenario, if we are doing a case in which it revolves around Disney's business and that it has been happening for a few years, yes, I do believe Bob Iger should actually hold some accountability in this case. And the reason why I say this is because technically Bob Iger Bob Iger was out of Disney for not that long. Yes, technically Bob Chapek was named the CEO in February of 2020, but Bob Iger only left Disney for just under a year, from January all the way up to the end of November. That was the only time when he was truly out. Beforehand, throughout 2020 and in the entirety of 2021, Bob Iger remained at Disney, and not necessarily as a co-CEO, but he was among the top positions. He was named the executive chairman of the Walt Disney Company, while he was handling a lot of the creative assets that have been going on throughout its divisions. He still had a top spot at Disney, while Bob Chapek was the CEO, or at least for a good amount of time, or for most of the time that he was the CEO, meaning that maybe this is just speculation, but Bob Iger does play a significant role in many of the executive decisions that would go on at Disney, especially during 2020 and in 2021. And it would not be hard to go and imagine that maybe he has played a role in terms of what to go and say to the investors, like what to go and tell them in terms of how the financial state of Disney Plus is going. That maybe there is a chance that he may have played a role in manipulating investors and telling them that, hey, Disney Plus is actually doing great. Trust me, we're going to get some major numbers going on, when in actuality, they may have not. So that's why I personally feel that, yeah, like Bob Iger should be held accountable as much as Bob Chapek and all those other CEOs, because what they do claim is that technically this incident occurred between December of 2020 all the way up to today. So there are some moments in which Bob Iger was still there as the executive chairman and as one of the top executives at Disney. So maybe he did play a significant part in terms of the alleged lying about the Disney Plus numbers and all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to be very honest with you all with this entire lawsuit that has been going on. Honestly, I don't know how the outcome is going to be. I mean, maybe there is a chance that the investors are going to win, and maybe there is a chance that Disney is going to go and settle with the investors, or there could be a chance that the Disney lawyers will have a sleight of hands and they would go and win this for the company, while the investors end up, well, kind of getting screwed over, or allegedly screwed over ultimately. I mean, there is that chance either way. I mean, we all know about how threatening Disney's lawyers can be. So that's why, in my opinion, I have no clue with how this is going to go. Maybe like things will go well for the investors. Maybe things will go well for Disney. Who the fridge knows? But one thing I can guarantee you is that this right here is not a good look for Disney. It's not a good look for their business whatsoever. And that is especially the case with the fact that they have not one, but multiple lawsuits related to this. Rather, if it's actually true that Disney is lying to their investors about the Disney Plus numbers or not, the fact that like there's more than one group of investors that are suing Disney for this, that is a bad image for the company. It's kind of similar to the allegations of the #MeToo movement, where if you would only have one person who would go and accuse another of sexual harassment, well, that's just one thing. But then if you have a whole group of people who would go and say the same thing, then suddenly those allegations become a bit more credible. And the fact that there are now multiple lawsuits in which they would go and sue Disney for the same thing, yeah, that image is looking bad for Disney. And it couldn't have come at a worse time, where their business is already looking pretty bad, especially with the way that they're trying to desperately save money and with the way that they have been handling the writers and actor strikes. So really, this is just one problem on top of another, where the business side of things is going pretty bad. And I don't think even Bob Iger would go and find a way to make a quick solution like he has done in the past, like when he had to fix Michael Eisner's problems. like, yeah, that's one major obstacle he had to go through, and I will give him credit, he managed to succeed that very well. But when it comes to fixing Bob Chapek's problems, on top of the other aspects that have been going on in this world, it's not been going well. And even Bob Iger's reputation, well, let's just say it hasn't been going as well as it was before. So that's just one thing I wanted to go and talk about regarding Disney's business right now, where, yeah, there may be some elements that may look great. Like creatively, Disney is actually doing pretty well, but business-wise, oh boy, it's quite a mess right there. And with that said, I would like to go into the chat wall, and now I want to ask you all, what do you think about this lawsuit? What do you think about the investors accusing Disney about lying in regards to the Disney Plus numbers? Let me know what you all think on this. Let's see. This is a big nightmare for Disney in dealing with a lawsuit about the actual numbers for Disney Plus. Well, technically more than one, but it's not just investors suing Disney, but even TSG Entertainment, Fox's financial partner, is also suing Disney for not being truthful and not getting a fair share of their money after financing their films over a decade before and after the acquisition of Fox. I don't know how this will turn out, but this is not a good outlook for Disney. Exactly. I think regardless if it's going to be financially helpful or not for Disney, like the financial aspect, that's a different story, and that can be very debatable. But in terms of their PR, that is an absolute nightmare. And right now, I could tell you that the public perception of Disney as a company, it's bad. It's like really, really bad. Oh, let's see now. And this is probably one of the greatest examples of why you should never lie to the investors and shareholders. Even if you want to give the impression that your streaming service is going well, it's not worth it when you run the risk of having to deal with a potential lawsuit. Now that Disney has 2 lawsuits against them, it's pretty likely that they have been lying to their investors, and I do hope Disney loses, because lying is still wrong no matter what you say or when you try to slice it. It is well, the thing is, some people would go and argue about, lying is one thing, but lying when money is involved, oh, that's when things really do get serious. So this is more of a financial revenge than anything, because I can imagine that companies like Disney, they will lie as many times as they can, and they can easily get away with it. But when money is involved, when they're lying about something in relation to money, that's when things really do get serious, and that's when there are going to be some people who will demand the truth. Let's see, what else do we have here? The more I think about it, the more I feel Bob Iger would be better off no longer being Disney's CEO. The fact that he was pretty much lying about their Disney Plus is just bad. Even with big hits they have with Ahsoka and the anticipated series like Loki Season 2 isn't going to be enough. So overall, all this is just a nightmare. And you know, the wildest thing about all this is that technically this is not necessarily their most problematic PR situation. This is still like pebbles in compared to the giant boulder of how they're handling the writers and actors strike. I mean, technically, they're not the only ones being screwed over in terms of PR, but still, though, the fact that Disney is one of the more prominent companies that are being antagonized, especially with some of Bob Iger's comments, yeah, it's just not a good look overall. So yeah, it's just an example to show you how Disney is really facing one business problem after another, especially in terms of their PR. In fact, I actually did hear that when Bob Iger made those comments about how the demands of writers and actors is just not realistic, after the backlash, they actually went and hired a PR firm of their own. Like, they actually spend hundreds of thousands of dollars just to go get their PR to go and calm the situation. Let's see, what else do we have here? What other comments? And this is what happens when they lie too much to others. You will just get into trouble. With how much trouble Disney has been as of late, getting hit by yet another lawsuit is just making them look worse. I'm sure after this lawsuit is done, other streaming services will have to be honest with its numbers to their investors. Sadly, I don't think that really is going to be the case. I think I think what other companies like Netflix and Amazon, what they're going to do is try to work harder in order to cover the numbers that they actually do have. I mean, who's to say that Netflix, Apple, Amazon, and more are also, that they're doing the same tactics as Disney? They're just doing a better job at covering it. I mean, these are all allegations. This is all just speculation, but I'm just saying, if Disney would go as far as to lie to their investors about the current status of their streaming platform, then I mean, it's not hard to imagine that Netflix, Warner Brothers, Paramount, and whatever are probably doing the same thing. I'm just saying. Let's see. Man, it's times like this I wish Abigail Disney was the one who owned the company. She seems to be the one person with any sense. Yeah, I know how you feel, and I'm definitely a big fan of the activist motives, or many of the activist actions done by Abigail Disney. Definitely a big fan of her, but I mean, with how capitalism is right now, it's like, it's a nice wish, but it probably won't happen because of how the system really screws everyone over. Let's see. Where do I even start? I'll go straight to the source of all this issue. If Disney hadn't started to buy all these studios and industries since the 1960s, then maybe they wouldn't be in such a maze of messes. I'll always respect the Disney classics, but I'll never respect the company as it is today. Being overbloated isn't a good choice, honestly. Well, I'm just saying right now that, honestly, the problem that you're highlighting isn't just Disney. It's the capitalist system. It's the system overall that allows companies like Disney to go and really buy up studios in order to go and overinflate itself. And Disney is not the only one that is doing so. There are plenty of other companies that are doing the same thing. So if you're really upset that Disney is just buying buying companies left and right, like Pixar, Marvel, and Lucasfilm and all that kind of stuff, if you're really upset about that, then really don't be mad at Disney. Be mad at the capitalist system that allows Disney to go and do so. I get your anger towards Disney because they are doing the actions, but they're doing so because the system allows them to do so. All right, I think I'm going to go and read one more comment before we go on to our next break. Let's see who would have one. Okay, fine. I'll go with this. I think with a lot of lawsuits like this, along with a few bombs at the box office, stock dropping, and others, let's just say that Disney is possibly the unluckiest company in the world. Bob Iger really needs help considering how he is right now. That could be debatable. I mean, yeah, it's not going great for Disney, but I'm sure there are many people out there who would argue that there are some other companies that are faring much, much, much worse. And case in point, maybe Disney is doing bad, but they're still in a better position than any company out there that is dependent on crypto. I'm just saying. All right, so with that said, we will be right back after these messages. But when we do return, we are going to go and discuss about something that I have brought up a few times, and that is regarding the strike, because there may be more coming than we may expect, so stay tuned. And we are back. Now, speaking of the SAG-AFTRA strike, there is another update in regards to the whole strike that has been going on right now. Now, I know in the past, I have talked plenty in regards to the actor strike and the writer strike and all the wild updates that have been going on. But now it looks like we may be seeing a second actor strike. And I know that technically it does sound a little bit weird that we even have a strike that there's going to be a second actor strike in the first place. But the thing is that, well, it's not necessarily what you think. They're not going to go on strike against Hollywood again. They're going to go and have a different target. Where in this case over here, now there's already a strike against film and television for actors, but now there's also going to be a strike in regards to video games, or at least there may be one. Now, keep in mind, as I am recording this, it is not official as of yet, but SAG-AFTRA has announced that they will be going on a vote that will go throughout most of September if they are going to go on strike against video game companies, or at least the video game companies that do work in SAG-AFTRA for voice actors and motion cap actors. Now, the companies that they are aiming to go after and that they will be fighting against if this strike does occur, they will include Activision, Blind Light, Disney Character Voices, Electronic Arts, Epic Games, Formosa, Insomniac Games, Take-Two Productions, VoiceWorks Productions, and WB Games. And we also got some quotes here coming from the president of SAG-AFTRA, Fran Drescher, to which she states over here, reading from my source on the Animation magazine, it states, "Here we go again. Now our interactive video game agreement is at a stalemate too. Once again, we are facing employer greed and disrespect. Once again, artificial intelligence is putting our members in jeopardy of reducing their opportunity to work. And once again, SAG-AFTRA is standing up to tyranny on behalf of its members. The overlap of these two SAG-AFTRA contracts is no coincidence, but rather a predictable issue impacting our industry as well as others all around the world. The disease of greed is spreading like wildfire, ready to burn workers out of their livelihoods and humans out of their usefulness. We at SAG-AFTRA say no, not on our watch." And I will say right now, for the most part, yes, what they are demanding is pretty much the same thing as they are demanding for film and television. And the main thing is regarding better payment, especially to go and try to work around the current state of inflation, as well as job security so that they ultimately do not get replaced by AI. There is also another quote that I have here coming from the National Executive Director and Chief Negotiator of SAG-AFTRA, Duncan Crabtree Ireland, to which he states, "The voice and performance capture artists who bring video game characters to life deserve a contract that reflects the value they bring to the multi-billion-dollar gaming industry. Voice and performance capture AI are already among the most advanced uses of AI. The threat is here and it is real. Without contractual protections, the employers are asking performers to unknowingly participate in the extinction of their artistry and livelihoods." Now, to go into a bit more specific as to what is it that the actors are demanding here, it's not just what I have referred to. You know, it's not just more pay and more job security to protect them from AI. It is stated over here, actually, it would be right over here, as it says, "In addition to AI protection, SAG-AFTRA is seeking the same wage increase for video game performers as for those who work under the film and television contracts, 11% retroactive to expiration and 4% increase in the second and third years of the agreement, necessary for members' wages to keep up with inflation. The union is also asking for on-camera performers to have the same 5-minute per hour rest period that off-camera performers are entitled to. Also needed, a set medic present when stunts or hazardous work is performed, just like on a film or television set, prohibitions against stunt on self-tape auditions, and vocal stress protections." So right now, they have stated that they're going to start mailing the vote ballots on September 5th, and actors will have a chance to go and vote if they're going to go on strike or not, all the way up to September 25th. So they do have a few weeks to go and decide if a strike against video game companies is going to be necessary or not. And I mean, with the precedents that we are seeing with the big Hollywood strike, with the writers and actors strike against big studios, I mean, it really was only a matter of time until video games start to go and enter the scene, and that actors would go and actually combat against video game companies to go into this. Because if you think Hollywood studios would be interested in trying to really save up money and trying to use AI in order to save a few bucks and stuff like that, video game companies are much more brutal. Like, that they would definitely be down to go and invest onto AI technology, or find ways to go and actually use less people that they could go and pay in favor of just making games automatically, so that the process can go faster and that they could release game faster, so that they could make money faster. That in their mindset, they would go and do that. And not to mention how we have heard many horror stories about the work environment in certain video game companies. Like, yeah, it could be bad in certain animation studios or visual effects studios, which is why we are seeing more and more of those kinds of companies demanding to be unionized, including Marvel or Disney Animation and stuff like that. But in video games, oh man, it could be quite a nightmare, especially with many of the horror stories that we have heard from companies like with Activision, or especially with Blizzard, just to go and name a few. So it was only a matter of time that there are going to be companies, or there are going to be unions that would go on strike against video games, especially when it comes to actors. Because I could tell you right now, and I'm speaking as an actor who has gotten some credits on video games, where the work that they would go and do, oh boy, it can offer so, they would have to do so much more than debatably in any other medium. Like, debatably, they would have to do more for video games than they would for either film and television, for commercials, for radio, or for anything like that. Because I could tell you, the work that needs to be done there, it is absolutely insane. And yeah, there should be better payments in order to go and completely reflect upon that. Because you may have noticed that it's not just job security and better wages that they're demanding, it's also some extra stuff for their well-being, where they would add vocal stress protections, where they would demand a set medic to be present whenever they would have to go and do like these crazy stunts. Like, these are things that are more for their well-being, as well as for fighting against AI and to get better payments. Because oh man, like, some of the jobs that I could tell you, like, some of the hardest jobs that I had to do is honestly for some video game projects, because they can really hurt the throat demanding on what you have to do. Because if you're going to be voicing for video games, I could tell you right now, they can go and be like they could demand you to do extreme things. And in a video game, they're demanding you to do several takes of like every little action that the playable character would have to go and do, or even like any NPC, or even like a boss or an enemy or anything like that. They would have to go and do so much, rather it be like whenever they're in for an attack, or whenever they're tired, or whenever they have to push like a giant boulder or something, or when they have to jump. Like, every little action that you have to go and think of, or whenever they have to go and do like crazy quips, or they would have to go into battle and stuff like that, like there could be a lot that they're demanding so much from the actor. Now, I know technically it's not all video games that are like that, but a good chunk of them do, especially like FPSs, fighting games, sometimes platformers. Like, there are so many of them that they demand like a lot of screaming and that they would demand like to really be loud and to go and shout, and not to mention like even like a lot of horror games can be the same way, like survival games, horror games, thriller games, or anything like that. They could be so much. Like one example that I could tell you is like one of my big breaks that I got is actually in a Warhammer game called Necromunda Underhive. Not necessarily a known game, and some people say it's not necessarily a good game, but this was actually a game in which I actually played the voice of the final boss of it, called Grand Dog. And what they demanded me to do, oh my god, like it was a true challenge to the throat, because Grand Dog is the type of villain who constantly shouts and is supposed to be like this big guy, so I have to sound like this massively tough dude, like, I will go and destroy you all with my weapon and me crew. You know, and imagine I had to go and do several takes of that with that loud, booming voice every single time with each take that I had to do. You know, it, like, trust me, it could be painful to the throat. Now, during that job, I was only there for 1 hour. I didn't necessarily have a whole lot of lines, but I had to do so much hard work for all the different types of dialogue and different like noises that I have to make with Grand Dog. And at the end of it, I was like so tired. Like my voice felt so strained. Like it was at the point where I really felt like I almost lost my voice. And I can even tell you right now, even doing that Grand Dog voice, like I could even feel it in my throat. Like it was a lot. Like I can already feel my throat a bit straining there. And like, even if you don't have any dialogue, even if it's just making shouts, making noises and all that kind of stuff, that can also be something that can like demand you to do a whole lot. Another game that I actually did do some voices is actually Bendy and the Dark Room, the sequel to Bendy and the Ink Machine. And I actually voiced one of the enemies. I forgot his name, but it was one of the brothers in which my head was like hanging on a hook, and like it was technically like a hidden mini boss, but like my character would hide in lockers and would just like keep popping up like on a jump scare and go after the playable character. Yeah, some people have mentioned yes, I was the voice of Fisher in Bendy and the Dark Room. And from there, I had to do a lot. Like I didn't have any dialogue. I didn't say any of the actual words that Fisher would say, but I had to do a lot of the noises when attacking the character. You know, I had to do a whole lot of like, and I had to do like different ways. Like I had to do like that kind of voice, like whenever I would run, if I would be set on fire, if I would be shot dead, if I would do like an extreme death or any of those kinds. Like, and that was another one that like was really hard on my throat. And the point that I am trying to make with this is that honestly, some of the hardest working voice actors are those who do work in video games. And I have firsthand experience on how that feels. And yes, I absolutely do feel like there should be much more compensation to those actors. In fact, there's honestly one thing that they didn't necessarily offer in there, but this is something that I do wish voice actors in video games have. Because honestly, with the current state of the video game industry, this is something that I feel like this kind of compensation is so desperately needed in the video game industry, especially for actors, and that is residuals. Because unlike actors who are working in film and television and stuff like that, they unfortunately do not get residuals for the work that they would do in video games. Despite the fact that the video game industry has become like a multi-billion-dollar empire that can fairly be comparable to movies and television, actors only still get some small payments and that's it. And they don't get compensated in the long run, which I personally find to be absolutely ridiculous, especially with the way that video games have become so iconic and they have become a massive staple in our pop culture. In fact, many of the most popular characters as of today are related to video games. And I feel like the payments that they earn and the compensation that they would have in the long run as well, it should be something that should reflect that. I mean, really think about it. I mean, you would have people who would be voicing legacy characters, like characters that are already so well known and are considered some of the most popular characters in our modern culture, like people who would voice Mario or Sonic the Hedgehog. And then you would have newer characters that would become like viral sensations in their own right, like people who would voice Freddy Fazbear or Lady Dimitrescu from Resident Evil Village. Like you would get all these characters, and yet the actors who would voice them, like they don't really get that much payment. I mean, yeah, like they would get paid in SAG-AFTRA scale, and like they would be like they would get some money on the spot, like just for doing that job. But in the long run, they don't really get that much. And that is the unfortunate reality, where there are many video game voice actors that are still struggling to this day. In fact, I remember I actually recently heard about a story in which the guy who voiced Atlas in BioShock, like BioShock is like a phenomenal video game, and not only that, but also a gigantic hit. And if I would tell you about Atlas from BioShock, many people would immediately know who that is. The actor who played him, unfortunately, is still struggling. Like, he still needs to have a second job in order to actually have a livable wage, in order to actually have, in order to pay the bills, to buy groceries and all that kind of stuff. So unfortunately, we are still in the reality that regardless of how much money the video game industry is making, the actors who play who play those iconic characters, they're not being paid as much as debatably they should. I don't know if it's actually going to be a part of the deal, and honestly, with the way that video game companies can be quite greedy, I don't think we'll be seeing that in a long time. But as an actor myself, I feel like that is one thing that I feel like should be necessary to include for actors. And not just that, and I mean, like, I'm just talking about voice actors, I'm talking about the people who are like whose voice can be heard and that they could be recognizable names in the public. This is not even to mention about those who would play mocap, like, and I know there are plenty of times in which there can be actors who would be in motion capture and they would voice the characters as well, but there are also times when like those two people can be completely separate, and there are many motion capture actors that their names are not recognizable. Like, they would play iconic characters like either Master Chief or Kratos, but we don't know who they are specifically in terms of bringing their movements to life. And those people, like, I can imagine they don't get compensated as well because, well, they're not recognizable names. They're not the voices that are attached to the characters that people can associate to go and bring them to life. So in that regard, yeah, like, I think I feel like at this point, is there going to be a strike that will happen against video games? In my opinion, I feel like, yeah, I think like it's going to be most likely. I think I can imagine that it's going to be more favorable for actors if they do go on strike against many of these video game companies, that they would go on strike against them. And by the way, one more thing I do want to mention is how the reactions towards the possible strike has been pretty ridiculous. I know that the majority of people have been very supportive of the SAG-AFTRA, not just the SAG-AFTRA strike, but the WGA strike. Like, basically the strike against Hollywood, people are in favor of both the actors and the writers. But there have been a lot of gamers that, well, not the majority of them, but oh boy, there have been some pretty bad takes coming from gamers, because gamers, they could be more likely to be less empathetic towards others than not. And what they would think about is just their games. That's why you would see on social media that you would see some cringy gamers making some dumb takes like, oh God, if they go on strike, does that mean that the game I want to be released is going to be delayed? This sucks, man. Which is honestly really stupid, because I could tell you right now, it is perfectly fine if your game does get delayed. The only thing we're asking from you is just a bit of patience. And I can guarantee you that it is perfectly okay if there is no overworked people in the gaming industry to go and create the games. Like, overworking your actors or your developers and stuff like that does not make the game better. If the employees get well treated, it can result in some great games as well. So I just want to go and make an emphasis on that. It's more important that the well-being of it's more important to care about the well-being of the people who make the games than the games themselves. I'm just saying. All right, so anyways, with that said, I would like to go into the chat wall, and I would like to ask you all, how do you feel about the idea of a potential second actor strike going on while the first actor strike is happening against film and television? I would like to know what you think on this. All right, let's see now. I did figure out that SAG will be heading towards video games as well, and honestly, good. I feel like the video game industry is far worse than the film and television industry when it comes to handling their own cast and crew members. I feel like it's time to call out these companies like EA and Activision to show who's the actual boss, in which it clearly is the developers and actors. They definitely deserve better, because I know for a fact how hard making a video game is. Yeah, and you know the thing is that I know the biggest nightmare for those video game companies is that it could end up setting a precedent to their developers. With how much we know about like all those nightmare stories in relation to how it is working on certain games, that maybe we could see certain game developers go on strike or form a union of their own so that they can go and have better treatment. And if that is the case, good, because I think it's about time that even game developers can actually have a union of their own so that they could put their well-being above working on whatever project that they would have. They absolutely deserve it. Let's see. With the way that some video game companies have treated their employees over the years, like Activision Blizzard, and the treatment working on games like Cyberpunk 2077 and The Last of Us Part 2, it really isn't surprising that these employees would go on strike, and I am hoping that these people will get treated better whenever we would have a strike or not. Absolutely, man. Let's see, what else do we have here? What a big oof that we're having in the entertainment industry. This is why I don't want to work at the video game industry, because of what's happening in the workplace of the video game industry. The only company that's missing on this list is Blizzard. I hope the companies don't use AI, because things would look a lot worse for the entertainment industry, especially for video games. Also, speaking of video games, who is excited to get Starfield released in 2 days? I know I am. And I'm just saying right now that technically Blizzard is on that list because they are in association with Activision. So in a way, like, they are on the list. It's just the fact that they're just a subsidiary of Activision. So if Activision is there, then that means, yes, that does include Blizzard. Let's see, what else do we have? With how much bad stuff I've heard about the video game industry, especially with companies like EA and Activision Blizzard, it was inevitable that we would get a strike against the video game industry as well. If they do, then I am in full support of the strike, but I can easily imagine some gamers throwing a hissy fit over this and post some of the worst takes of all time. Looking at you, Starfield pronoun guy. Oh yeah, oh my god, yeah, that is definitely true. And I mean, like, we are already seeing that. that. And I mean, we'll just have to wait and see with how it goes. Maybe there is a possibility there will be a strike, or maybe there may not. But also, if there is going to be a strike, that doesn't necessarily guarantee that we will be seeing some games that could be delayed. I mean, yeah, the actors are going to go on strike, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the developers are going to be going on strike as well. I don't think, it's kind of, and especially right now, if you do think about it, the effect that we have seen in terms of film and television is kind of minimal. Like, we have seen some delays of some movies, like from Warner Brothers and Sony, but like, it's not everyone that's delaying all their films like we have seen back in the pandemic in 2020. So I doubt if there would be a strike going on that we would see all these major delays happen. So I just want to go and emphasize that. Let's see now. Guess everything related to... Oh, no. Sorry, I already... did I already read that? No, I think I did read that. Sorry about that. Let's see, what else? What other comments? I've already read. Okay. This is not right. Overworked and underpaid, the gaming industry. In a nutshell, nowadays, the only reason the Nintendo, I guess, is not on the list is because they're exclusively hired non-union actors. But all the companies you mentioned, EA, Activision, Ubisoft, etc., all use union actors, and they promise one thing and get another, according to Taylor Strong, to Tara Strong, who voiced Harley Quinn for Warner Brothers games. Don't forget Keith Sutherland, who was underpaid for Metal Gear Solid 5. Yeah, and I mean, like, you keep hearing so much about, like, people who are being underpaid, especially in terms of the gaming industry. This is why I'm asking that there should be residuals for union actors in video games, because, yeah, like, if they're getting, if it is $1 billion empire as much as film and television, then it should, like, yeah, why don't you also go and compensate the actors who do bring the characters to life in the long run? I mean, like, honestly, the woman who played Lady Dimitrescu in Resident Evil Village shouldn't be struggling to go and keep trying to find work, and just rely on being Lady Dimitrescu alone. I'm just saying. All right, I think I'll read one more comment before we go on our next break. Considering that EA and Activision Blizzard has treated their people in the last couple of years, it's likely that this strike will begin if it proceeds. It honestly deserves that, because it can prove that people can't be treated horribly by those companies and deserve more respect and attention. If the strike is sure to happen, then it no doubt show full support of the strikes. Video game companies deserve to be called out. All right, so with that said and done, there will be one more break that we're going to have. And when we do enter into our grand finale, we're going to go and cap this off on a lighter note. With all the madness that's been going around, like, I know that things have been pretty depressing in this world lately, especially like with all the tyranny and hate that we've seen just going around. We need to cap this off on a lighthearted note, so stay tuned for that. And now, folks, it is time that we shall go and cap off this episode with the grand finale. And originally, I was thinking of having a more chaotic finale onto this one. There was at one point, I was thinking about the big controversy that happened during the weekend over on Twitter. Maybe you have heard about this regarding the whole trend about ban the ADL, in which a lot of far-right groups and a lot of troll accounts have demanded that the Anti-Defamation League gets banned on Twitter, because they had a discussion with the CEO in regards to how they could go and handle hate speech, which led to a lot of white supremacist personalities freaking out and demanding that the ADL gets banned. And for those of you who don't know, the Anti Anti-Defamation League is the organization that combats against extremism and more specifically against anti-Semitism. So you can imagine how bad it looks when there is an entire platform that's trying to rally together to go and attack a group that is fighting against anti-Semitism. And yes, hate speech became so rampant on Twitter, where a lot more people pretty much unleash their anti-Semitism, release their homophobia, their racism. Like, basically, you see so many conservative accounts somehow becoming Nazis. And worst of all, Elon Musk was supporting it, like not only enjoying all the ban the ADL posts that have been making, but he even made a poll that is exclusively to those who pay for Twitter, demanding if the Anti-Defamation League should be banned from Twitter. Now, originally, I was thinking about talking about that, but let's be honest, that story was just way too depressing. You know, it's kind of sad to hear about the rise of Nazism that is happening on Twitter, and it's honestly one of the reasons why I have been posting so much less on that platform, and that I've been more engaged with either Facebook or especially with Blue Sky. But I decided, you know what? Why don't we have a more change of pace? Why don't we actually have a more positive ending? Let's actually talk about something that is good that is happening in our world. And I actually did find the perfect story, and it came from some very unlikely sources. And in this case, it's late night talk show hosts. Yes, the combined works of Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, Seth Meyers, and John Oliver have decided to go and team up together in order to go and create a brand new podcast called Strike Force 5. Now, to give you a little bit of context, as you probably know, when the writer's strike began back in May, one of the first things that immediately shut down was late night talk shows, because if they don't have any writers, well, then they pretty much do not have a show, and the hosts do not have any materials that they could go and work with. So that is why I almost forgot. From there, because the late night shows are pretty much out of order, that like one of the downsides that came with it is the fact that the employees of those late night talk shows, well, unfortunately, they don't really have a job anymore. They would have to go and find another place to go and find some work, or they're pretty much unemployed by now. So that is one sad part about this. But this is where Strike Force 5 comes in, where the 5 late night talk show hosts decided that they're going to go and create a podcast, a limited podcast, but specifically the purpose of it is that they could go and actually fund to go and give the money to those out of work late night crew so that they can actually make a living while the strike is still happening. In fact, to go into my source here on Deadline, to go and discuss about like what this is all about, it is stated here, it is the latest venture by the hosts of The Late Show, The Tonight Show, Jimmy Kimmel Live, Late Night, and Last Week Tonight to help those affected by the strike. The group has regularly provided treats, including ice cream and lunches, to those on the picket lines, and many of them were paying out of pocket for their staffs that have been unable to work for the last 4 months. The series will run for at least 12 weeks, with all hosts participating in each episode and rotating who leads the conversation. It comes as the late night hosts started speaking on Zoom once the WGA strike was called, meeting every week to discuss the stoppage. It is a far cry from the late night wars of the 90s and the 2000s. And there was even a little preview that they even put up. It's just a small 30-second thing, but why don't we actually go and listen to it? Let's actually hear about what this is all about, or at least the tone of what Strike Force 5 is. It'll play.
One more time, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Fallon.
I'm Stephen Colbert.
I'm Jimmy Kimmel. I thought when you said Jimmy, you meant me, Jimmy, but you meant Jimmy.
I always mean you.
But when you say Seth Meyers, who do you mean?
I mean John Oliver.
It's the 5 of us together for maybe an hour a day.
Strike Force 5 is the name of our podcast. Subscribe to it now.
Spotify or wherever else you get your podcasts.
But Spotify, you
Yeah, so that is just a bit of a taste of Strike Force 5. So it's basically all the 5 together so that they could go and, basically have a chat with one another, talk about what's been happening in this world, and raise money so that they could go and fund it to their staff. And honestly, I find this to honestly be a very beautiful thing, and honestly kind of a surprising thing, especially from all these hosts, because I know that when it comes to late night talk show hosts, there are varying emotions that people do have in terms of some of them. Like for me personally, I kind of feel like there are some that kind of feel a little bit phony. Like I do get a small sense of that on Jimmy Kimmel, but especially in terms of Jimmy Fallon. Like, he's not there yet, but I feel like he's kind of close to becoming like the next James Corden or Ellen DeGeneres. But then again, I also have nothing but respect for Stephen Colbert and John Oliver. But it's kind of surprising to see all of these guys together to go and actually help out to help out their staff during these times, especially when they cannot have any work whatsoever. And I mean, technically, this is not the first time that we have heard about late night talk show hosts actually helping out their crew so that they can actually have some form of salary or some form of income so that they could just survive, so that they can put food on the table and have a roof over their heads. In fact, like, there have been several stories in which some of these people like Stephen Colbert or Seth Meyers have actually done so in order to go and help out their staff during the pandemic. So it's not the first time that they have done this kind of action, but it does track with what they would usually do to show that they actually do care about their staff, that they are very well aware that they wouldn't have a show if it weren't for those people in particular, that, it's not just about them. It's about all the people who help put them on that platform to begin with. They are aware that running a late night talk show is indeed a team effort. And from there, like I said before, it is kind of it is one of the downsides from the writer strike, where there are a few not necessarily casualties per se, but there are a few people that did ended up right in the middle of the crossfires, and their jobs were unfortunately affected, even if they weren't writers in the first place, where they don't necessarily have a job because, well, their jobs cannot function if they don't have the writers actually working in there. So that's why we're seeing now that they want, that we see these late night talk show hosts want to put in some extra effort to go and actually help their staff out, to go and help out their crew until it is actually over. And also, I just want to go and mention that there is also another indirect downside to having this writer strike. It's not necessarily like a really bad thing to say oh, this strike should not happen, but it is one of those things that people do regret in terms of having the strike going on. And that is because, oh man, these late night talk shows, I can guarantee you, they have been missing out on so much potential news that it would, these things are usually like a gold mine for these late night talk show hosts. And oh man, the fact that they cannot cover it is just, there's a bit of a tragedy. I mean, think about it. Throughout the summer, there's just been so much craziness that has been going on in the world. Rather it be the whole trend in relation to Barbenheimer, or the self-destructive nature of Elon Musk, and the more crazy things he tries to do, the more that he's just ruining Twitter, to the point that the website could inevitably shut down, especially if he's going to remove the block feature. And of course, especially the centerpiece of it all, the one thing that makes it so sad that these late night talk shows cannot be on, is related to Trump. The crazy political news with all of Trump's indictments, the mugshot that he got, the fact that he was arrested and turned himself in. Oh man, imagine the materials that all these hosts would have had, just to go and flat out roast them. like that's kind of the sad thing about them, about all this, is the fact that like they don't have their usual major platform to go and have all that comedic material. Like the possibilities just washed away because they don't have the writers to go and create that kind of material. But regardless, though, the reason why that material is wasted is completely understandable. And I mean, like, the writers have a great reason as to why they are on strike in the first place and why this strike is shockingly still ongoing. I mean, keep in mind, the whole thing, like, the writer's strike began back in May. We're in September now. So it really says a lot about how insane this strike has been going on so far. But honestly, I do find that it is a wonderful thing that these hosts are really going out of their way, and now they're like, not only are they providing content to their fans, not only are they doing something to keep that signature entertainment that they are known for still going on, even if it's on something like a podcast, but also that they're doing it to go and help out their staff. It's not just to keep their legacy going on. It's not just to keep the spirit of late night talk shows alive, but it's primarily so that their staff can actually have some kind of compensation, that they can have some money during these times until the strike can be over. And that's why, honestly, like, regardless if you're a fan of late night talk shows or not, regardless of how you may feel about certain of these people, this is why, like, and by the way, I just want to say right now, no, this is not sponsored. I have not been paid by Strikeforce 5 in order to go and do this, but I honestly highly recommend that you go and give Strikeforce 5 a listen. If not for the hosts, it is for the staff. Like, you'll have a little taste of like some of the comedic antics of Colbert or Myers or Oliver or Fallon or Kimmel, and in return, like, that you're helping out people who have indirectly been affected by the strike. So this is just something that I want to go and bring up, and why I want to go and cap this off with a bit of a feel-good story to show you that despite all the chaos and the hatred that's been going on in the world, there are some people who are still doing some good. That they are doing some positive actions in which it is primarily made to go and actually help others out, and especially in terms of helping others in need. In fact, I believe it is a quote from Fred Rogers. I remember Mr. Rogers, he actually did a comment in which when he was a kid or something like that, like, he listened to the radio or he saw on television some horrific events that are happening, and his mother gave him a great advice to go and actually look to find the people who are helping in times of crisis. When things are going bad, look for the people who are helping in order to go and find some faith in humanity, because no matter what, there is some good in this world. There are some people who want to go and actually help and want to provide some positivity, and especially to go and help out those in need, to help out victims who are in distress or who are indirectly affected by some pretty bad fights. And this is an example here. This is just a way to show you that there is some good in this world. And again, like, I could go on to talk about some of the craziness that has been going on, rather it be like with all the strikes that have been happening, or all the bad business scenarios that's going on with the Walt Disney Company, or even with all the stupid culture wars that have been going on, or like the dilapidated status of Twitter or anything else like that. But it's also important to be reminded that there are some good in this world, that there is some positivity that is still happening. And this is definitely the case with what we are seeing here with the late night talk show hosts coming together to help out their staff. All right, so with that said and done, I would like to know from the chat wall, do you guys want to have a comment in regards to Strikeforce 5? And especially if you are a fan of late night talk show hosts, or even a fan of at least one of them, I would love to know what you think on this. Let's see now. It's nice to see all the late night talk show hosts come together to make a podcast and make some money awareness for those writers who don't have a job right now, or to those staff people right now. I know it sucks during these tough times, but it's great to see these guys doing it. I don't watch late night shows but during nighttime, but I'm glad that they are doing so. All right. Almost feels like that moment when Krusty literally drove at a desert to do this, to do his show business, minus providing money to your workers. Oh boy, yeah, hey, let's not talk about the desert right now, because trust me, even though I'm not talking about it, I am well aware of some of the stupidity that's been going on with the Burning Man Festival, which apparently turns out to be Firefest 2.0. I'm just saying. Let's see. I find this to be a wonderful idea. While I myself don't care much for these late night talk shows, the fact that these hosts want to come together to do a podcast in order to help support the people that are on strike. So this is a great and nice way for these hosts to do something until these strikes end. Yeah, exactly. Even as someone who barely watches late night hosts, this is a great idea, honestly. It's both a neat idea for these hosts to explore, and it's also done to support the writers who are out of a job at the moment. It's nice to see that there is indeed some big people out there that do indeed care about their staff. Do we have any other comments? Like, I know this may not necessarily be like a popular subject, but I just want to know if like people have anything else that they would like to go and say. Let's see. Man, all these late night talk show hosts couldn't have couldn't have potential for the summer or possibly in the fall if the writer's strike is still going on, especially John Oliver. The fact without much news lately, it could have been the best material for their work. Exactly, man. But still, again, there is a good reason, though. I mean, it's perfectly understandable. It's like it's a necessary sacrifice. I think that's the best way to put it. I think this is a good ending for the episode. I'm a huge John Oliver fan, and it's nice to see a crossover again, but I'm happy to see this type of good deed happening from the big guys. And, okay, so I think we'll have one more comment that we'll go and read. Oh yeah, it's true. As my grandmother always says, the world can never be cruel for the cruelty that may only come from you. It's only cruel if you would only give up if people life is wonderful. Hold on. Just need to reread that, honestly. I think like maybe I messed up or something like that. As my grandmother always says, the world can never be cruel for the cruelty that may only come from you. It's only cruel if you would only give up in people. If you give up in people, life is wonderful. Okay, now I do understand. And with that said, that should do it for this episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. Thank you all so much for joining me on this, and maybe next week we will have a heftier episode. I know that there hasn't been a whole lot of major news to go and discuss, but maybe better luck next time, than which maybe one day we will have a 5-story episode, but who knows. But with all that said and done, I would like to say thank you all so much for listening and watching. And if you would like to have more of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast, then don't forget to go and subscribe to my Twitch channel, AniMat Live, and on the AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast YouTube channel. And on top of that, don't forget to also follow me on whatever podcast service you're listening to, whether it be on Spotify, Amazon, Google, iTunes, and many, many more. And with all that said and done, I would like to say thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, see you later, dudes.